For Unit 3, we're going to start talking about parallel lines in the transversal. Now, parallel lines, let me emphasize here. Let me take a look. Parallel lines are lines that never cross. So, I mean, let's assume these two lines are parallel, so they never cross. As a matter of fact, in our work, we're going to start seeing parallel lines with, I'm going to indicate with an arrow. I'm going to mark the two lines to indicate that those two lines are parallel. Sometimes it might be one arrow or two arrows. As long as I mark them the same, pretty much I'm indicating those two lines are parallel. Again, they don't intersect. Now, these two lines, so they do go on forever on each side. These two lines get intersected by another line. Now, this other line, which we're going to call a transversal. Okay, so again, parallel lines in a transversal. Now, interesting, we're going to learn three names today. We're going to talk about corresponding, vertical, and adjacent. Now, corresponding is, you notice how I created two corners. Let me highlight this corner and this other corner. So I created two corners, right? Now, the corresponding is basically, if I was to grab an angle on one corner, so let's say I was to look at this corner, this angle right here. Remember, an angle it's a corner. If I was to copy it, and then let's say it was a piece of paper, and I was to cut out this corner, and I was to overlap it on the other side, where would that angle land on? Which angle would that be? And in that case, it would be this angle. Again, if I was to look at an angle on one of my corners, cut it out, and put it on top of the other corner, where would that angle be? That's what we call corresponding. Okay, so that's what we call corresponding. Now, another one that we're going to be looking at is what we called vertical. Let me take this out. Vertical. The next thing we're going to talk about is what we call vertical angle. Now, vertical angles and adjacent angles are going to happen at the same corner. Vertical angle, let's say I was to pick this angle, is the opposite angle here. Now, the interesting is two vertical angles are created when there's an X form. Look, there's an X form, and the vertical angles are the angles that are opposite from each other. So every time there's an X form, and opposite in geometry means far away. Every time there's an X form, angles that are opposite from each other is what we call vertical. Now, adjacent are also going to happen in when there's an X form. So again, I'm going to be looking at this X when there's an X form, but adjacent means next to. So it would be like this angle with this other angle. Adjacent angles are angles that are next to each other. There's still an X form, but they are next to each other, not opposite. Remember, opposite means far away. These are adjacent, so next to each other. So for the first part, I label two angles, X and Y. All right, I'm not asking you to solve for X. I'm not asking you for solve for Y. I just label two angles. And then looking at question number one, for example, I'm looking at this angle here and this angle here. And then I'm asking, identify each pair of angles, right? Pair means two angles. Identify each pair of angles as corresponding, vertical, or adjacent. In this case, I see these two angles are together when there's an X form. You guys see my X form. These angles are next to each other. So this is what I called adjacent. So my question here is just to identify this. I'm gonna call this adjacent. Looking at question number two, I see my angle X and my angle Y. I mark them down. They're not on the same corner. This is what we call corresponding. Remember, if I was to cut the top part, if I was to cut this, angle Y would land right where angle X is. Remember, that's what we call corresponding. Looking at question number 3, I see there's an X formed in these two angles. There's angle Y and there's angle X. They're next to each other, so I'm going to call this adjacent. And then lastly, question number 4. For this topic, I'm going to work questions up to 12 today. I see there's an X form, so I see angle X and Y. They're in the same corner here, X and Y. Now, these two angles are not adjacent. These angles are opposite from each other. Remember, far away. So this is what I call vertical. So part of my homework will be just to identify whether they're adjacent, they're corresponding, or they're vertical. Then I'm going to be dealing with the measurements. You guys see how questions 5 through 8, this red mark, these are basically just to identify that these two arrows are parallel, and I see there's a transversal. I can see these angles right here are vertical. Now, interesting part is that vertical and corresponding, let me write that down. Well, let me just say it instead. Vertical and corresponding. Whenever I'm dealing with vertical angles or corresponding angles, those angles are equal to each other. So vertical angles are equal to each other. Corresponding angles are equal to each other. So here, question number 5, I see there's a question mark. You guys see my angle. One of them is a question mark. Then one angle is 103. Vertical angles are equal to each other. So here it says find the measure of each angle indicated. So the question mark, basically, how big is that angle? I'm going to call this 103 degrees. Now, you don't have to type in the symbol for degrees, just 103. So remember, vertical angles and corresponding angles are equal to each other. So one angle is 103, the other one is 103. Now, adjacent angles, I know an L shape is 90 degrees. I see this one right here, the one I'm solving is seems to be less than 90. So I see 100 degrees there, but I said that one's less than 90. So this one are not quite going to be opposite. I mean, are not going to be quite equal to each other. When it comes to to adjacent angles, two angles are adjacent. One thing that I can see here, this is 100. Here's the other angle. Have it called a question mark right now. Interesting part is when I see them, they seem to create half of a circle. I know a circle, an entire circle is 360. So I'm going to say half of a circle is 180. Adjacent angles, because they create half of a circle. The way I'm going to solve this, I'm going to add them up and equals to 180. Now in algebra, so last year in algebra, we learned that when we don't know the value of something, we call it x. We call it a letter, tends to be x or y. So in this case, let me call it x. This angle right here, I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to call it x. And I just said that the two adjacent angles, so I'm going to add this thing up, 100 plus x, two adjacent angles, they add up to 180. Let me subtract this 100. This 100, let me move it to the other side as a minus. So I get that x is equal to 80. That angle right there is 80 degrees. My answer, I'm just going to type in 80. Remember, I just knew that those two angles added to 180. If you could already tell without doing the algebra steps, you could already tell that if one of them is 100, the other one has to be 80 because combined is 180. If you already knew that, then just type in your answer. Looking at question number 7, these two angles happen to be corresponding. Remember how I said the corresponding angles are equal to each other? If one of them is 52, then I'm going to say the other one is also 52 degrees. Corresponding angles are equal to each other. Vertical angles are also equal to each other. Adjacent angles, you add them up and equals 180. So let's take a look at here, number 8. This angle and this angle. Are they equal to each other? or do I add them up and equals 180? So is that angle 74 or 106? Well, in this case, I have vertical angles, right? Because there's an X form, angles are opposite. Vertical angles are equal to each other. So one of them is 74. I'm going to say the other angle is also 74. So this is going to be part of my homework as well. And then the other part of the homework, I'm going to do questions 9 through 12. Here it says solve for X. So here I'm going to do some algebra steps. First, identify whether the angles you're dealing with are adjacent, corresponding, or vertical. One angle is 70 degrees and the other angle is 13x plus 5. As you guys can see, I'm dealing with vertical angles. Vertical angles because I see there's an X form. You guys see my X right here. There's my X form. These angles are opposite from each other. And I know vertical angles are equal to each other. So let me just write 13x plus 5 is equal to 70. And then just do your algebra steps. I remember for algebra, I have to separate them through the equal sign. I'm going to separate my sides. So you guys see I drew a little segment there. I want letters on one side. So I want the letters by themselves. So the 13x, I want it by itself. So this plus 5, I want to get rid of it. I don't just make it disappear. I move it to the other side. But I got to switch the sign. So instead of plus 5, let me write it on the other side as a minus 5. So I have that 13x is equal to 65. Now 65 because I did 70 minus 5. 70 minus 5 is 65. Now, because the x is not by itself, it has a 13 in front of it, I'm going to divide both sides by 13 to get the x by itself. Use a calculator if you need to. 65 divided by 13. Keep in mind I call it dividing because a fraction is division. 65 divided by 13 is 5. So x is equal to 5. Remember, my instructions were solve for x. Solve basically means is find a value that makes this statement true. So the value of x in this case is 5. On your homework, I don't expect you to type in x equals 5. I just expect you to type in the number. So in this case, 5. All right, let's take a look at question number 10. These two angles are corresponding. Now remember, corresponding are angles that are equal to each other. So I'm just going to go x plus 75 is equal to 70. I let them equal each other because they are corresponding. Let me separate them through the equal sign. I want the x by itself. So this plus 75, let me move it over as a minus 75. I got to switch the signs. So I get x is equal to 70 minus 75 is equal to negative 5. X is equal to negative 5. So my answer will just be negative 5. Don't type in any spaces. I know it looks like my negative and my 5 are separated. Don't be typing extra spaces. So just negative 5. Don't add a space in between. Let's take a look at number 11. Now this angle, 10x and 60, they seem to be adjacent. Now remember, adjacent angles, they add up to 180. So I'm going to add these two angles, 10x plus 60, and I'm going to let this equal to 180. That's what happens with adjacent angles. Let me separate them through the equal sign. This plus 60, let me move it over as a minus 60 because I want the 10x by itself. Now 180 minus 60 is 120. To get the x by itself, let me divide both sides by 10. So x is equal to 12. Right, 120 divided by 10 gave me 12. That's not bad. Let's take a look at number 12. These two angles are corresponding. And I know corresponding angles are equal to each other. So let me write this as 131 is equal to 21x plus 5. Let me separate them through the equal sign. I'm not Earlier, I didn't say move everything, always move things to the left or always move things to the right. I said I want to get the x by itself. Sometimes the x might be on the left side. Sometimes the x might be on the right side. I want the x by itself, so this plus 5, I want to get rid of it. I'm going to bring it to this other side. Don't forget to switch the sign. I know 131 minus 5 is 126. So I have 126 equals 21x. Now let me divide both sides by 21. So I know I get the x by itself on the right side. 126 divided by 21, it's equal to 6. So x is equal to 6. Mainly, the hard part is remembering when do they equal each other and when do they add up to 180. Corresponding and vertical angles are equal to each other. Adjacent angles are the angles that add up to 180.